Look at completing the square. And what completing the square is, what's the whole point of this process, is you're taking what's called the standard form of a quadratic in this case, and you're changing it to the vertex form. And that's so that we can find the vertex very simply. And it's also easier to graph in vertex form, where standard form doesn't lend itself to that. It's kind of actually difficult. I'm supposed to put an arrow there. Okay, so and the standard form is usually written as y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, and that's what we have here. And the vertex form is y equals ax minus h squared plus k. You can write it in both different forms of the same equation, it'd be the same equation, but we have different values for like b, c, h, and k. They're all going to be different numbers. So the very, very first step here is we want to make sure the coefficient in front of the x squared is 1. Okay, so in this case, it is not 1. It is 1 over 2. So let's convert it to a decimal because it might be simpler to go through these rules if we're using decimals. So y equals, that would be 0.5 x squared. And everything else is still the same, they're whole numbers. Okay. We want to make the coefficient, they call that, that's coefficient in front of the x squared 1. So in order to do that, we're going to divide the first two terms by this. So common factoring. I don't know what that is. I'm going to erase something here. Oh, no, I don't. Okay. And in order to do that, we're going to divide the very first two terms by whatever the coefficient is. So because it's 0.5, we divide both the first terms by 0.5. Okay. So that 0.5 kind of comes outside a set of brackets. That whatever our c value is still stays the same. It's way outside here. Okay? And then we have to do some calculating. 0.5 divided 0.5 is 1. Okay, so now we know we're just left with x squared, and that's the whole point of that, to be left with x squared. And 3 divides 0.5. You can use a calculator. I'm going to tell you that it's going to be 6. Okay, so if you want to follow with that calculator there. So we get 6x inside of our bracket. The next step is, consider this like the new b value. This was b, and this was c, and this was a in standard form. This is our new b value. There's a little formula you need to put this through. The formula is b divided by 2 squared. Okay.
So that's what this is?
That's exactly what that is. And it says plus and minus. That's even better to write plus or minus in front of it, because you are going to use the positive and negative value of that. So we got to do a little, sometimes they call it on the side of an envelope calculation, but it's a side calculation. So our new b value is 6. So 6 divided by 2 squared. And we're going to use the positive and negative value of that. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So we're going to have 3 squared. Again, positive and negative value of that. And 3 squared is 9. So positive and negative 9. Great. So this positive and negative 9 is going to go, we're going to put it into the equation. So what allows us to do that, we should talk about. So I'm going to write the equation out again. 0.5 x squared plus 6x. And now we're going to add 9 and subtract 9 from the equation. So when you add and subtract by the same value, you end up with 0. Yeah. And what that means is we're adding zeros to the equation, which means we're not adding anything to the equation. All this is allowing us to do is build something that's easy to factor. It's called a perfect square trinomial. You don't have to know what that means for this process, but that's the point of this step. Okay. Now, in order to do that, to complete this final step, we got to take the negative value that we earned, okay, that we built, and we got to take it outside of the brackets. When you do that, you have to multiply by the a value. And again, if you want reasoning behind it, is because you have to use something called distributive property normally. Yeah. So because we're removing things without using distributive property, we still have to multiply this by that value. So we take that 0.5 and we multiply the negative 9 times. Okay. So y equals 0.5 x squared plus 6x. We keep the positive 9, so the positive 9 stays here. And then negative 9 times 0.5. You can use a calculator. I'm going to tell you it's going to be negative 4.5. Okay. So that's what happens when it came outside the bracket. It became negative 4.5 plus 5. So a couple things we can do here. First, let's do this one on the outside. Y equals 0.5 x squared plus 6x plus 9 Negative 4.5, and 5 is going to be plus 0.5. Let me figure that out. So in terms of vertex form, we're actually really, really close at this step. The last thing we need to do is, what it's really doing is you're factoring this. But because you've built a special version, you can factor it really simply by finding the square root of the first and the last term and bringing down whatever the operation was of your middle term. So y equals 0.5. Okay. And the square root of the first term is going to be your first term in the bracket. The square root of the second term is going to be your second term in the bracket. And the operation in the middle is whatever's there. So if it's negative, it'd be negative. If it's positive, we bring a positive. So square root of x squared is just x. So we put an x here. Square root of 9 is just 3. So we put a 3 here. We need to put a squared outside this bracket. And then plus our 0.5. So kind of a long process for these steps. And it can kind of be broken down without all those explanations, but these are the visuals to the main steps that you have to use.
Yeah.
And as you get better at it, you might be able to skip more and more steps. It's kind of your preference.